Listen, you want to know what makes a great entrepreneur? I'd say the first thing is luck, and I had it in boatloads. I've never considered myself until recently to be a risk taker, but if my friends and business associates were here, they would now be laughing because they think that I have huge cojones.
I'm really excited to bring to you one of Dubai's phenomenal entrepreneurs who has the #1 company in his space here in the UAE.
One of the models for quick success is look for something that is working. What I love is making a difference. And actually, I know this is really corny, but if people that I've developed do something and I feel that I've played a role in it, then that gives me fulfillment.
I'm super excited to welcome to the show a really fantastic character and someone that can teach us a lot about adapting to new environments and making a success within them. Please welcome Neil Petch. Hi everyone, and welcome to this episode of the podcast. I'm really excited to bring to you one of Dubai's phenomenal entrepreneurs who has the #1 company in his space here in the UAE. Not only has he been here a long time, he knows this country inside and out. He's a seasoned entrepreneur and business leader with a proven track record of success here in the UAE. He's founded and grown multiple successful businesses, including Virtuzone, the region's largest company formation operator. As the chairman of the Virtu Group, he oversees a diverse portfolio of ventures from angel investing to corporate services. His expertise extends beyond business management to media, finance, and entrepreneurship. He has held leadership roles in major media companies and served as chairman of the world's first interbank financial brokerage. With his deep understanding of the UAE market and his ability to foster innovation, he continues to be a driving force in the country's business landscape. I'm super excited to welcome to the show a really fantastic character and someone that can teach us a lot about adapting to new environments and making a success within them. Please welcome Neil Petch. All right, folks, let me tell you about IOPN, the Internet of People. IOPN is the next iteration of the Internet, using revolutionary blockchain technology that's built on decentralized community ownership. Now, when I say decentralized community ownership, I mean it's not only controlled by a bunch of tech giants. Instead, everyone who's part of it has a say and a stake in how things run. It gives regular people like me and you and businesses and brands an easy and fair chance to grow and make some money and build communities. IOPN is making things happen through a few key verticals. Now let's go through them. OPN Chain is a cutting-edge layer 1 blockchain that's efficient, scalable, and eco-friendly. iCognitive, a set of AI tools changing how we develop apps. Yeah, develop apps. OPN Verse, a dynamic, hyper-realistic, AI-powered platform that's making Web3 experiences better. Big organizations like Dubai Multi-Commodities Center, Dubai World Trade Center, and Ras Al Khaimah government are already seeing the potential with IOPN themselves. It's about creating a Web3 future where technology serves us, us, the people, unlike what Web2 did, where we often end up serving big tech companies. Check out the Internet of People today and see how you can leverage their ecosystem. I promise you, it's worth the time. Neil, thanks for coming on the show.
Pleasure to be on Unscripted. Love the title.
Well, I'm glad you've taken the time to appreciate the fact that we've put a bit of effort in, and God knows how much design companies spend and time designing logos and stuff.
It's my favorite kind of podcast because we can genuinely say that we prepared by not preparing.
It's totally prepared. So you've been in this part of the world a long, long time. People ask me, I've been here 20 years, and it's like, how you've been here a long time. You've been here way.
You're a whippersnapper, Spencer. I lived in Bahrain in the early 70s. I was given a gold watch by the Emir, so I've expected the GCC to give to me in similar proportions ever since. And I've been in Dubai 33 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Just take me back a little bit here to what Dubai was like. Give me 1 or 2 minutes of
a picture of what it was like for you being here. So if that's 33 years ago, so you're young, you're kind of full of energy and vibrance, and the whole world is this kind of like big opportunity.
It's very, very easy to spot someone that's lived in Dubai as long as I have, because we think that you can get anywhere in Dubai in 15 minutes. We expect to be invited to every single VIP party. We think we should get a discount. We're sitting here on the Palm. I remember when they launched the Palm, and I was waiting for this is a very special offer for you, Mr. Petch, which of course never came, and why should it? But so the police will drive us home at the end of let's call it an arduous evening sort of feeling. And it was really like that. I lived, my first couple of weeks was in Golden Sands 5, which is in Bur Dubai. The roads were dust and sand, and my company car was a Toyota Corolla. So I was able to put the back out at about 35 kilometers an hour. So those were my early experiences. It was just an amazing, listen, you want to know what makes a great entrepreneur, I'd say the first thing is luck, and I had it in boatloads.
Wow. And did we obviously go into Bahrain first? I mean, I would argue that Bahrain was kind of a real expaty place all those years ago, kind of like
To be fair to me, I think I was 7 years old, so I can't remember too much of it, other than there was a beach, and that's how I met the emir. There was a beach, and I came in from swimming, and there was a cake and a Coke on a table. And where on earth's that come? And that's a gift for you. A cake? Imagine when you're 7 years old, and a Coke. It was amazing. And then we were invited to what I've since learnt was his majlis, and the rest is history. So yeah, it was a little bit, that's, Aramco started, the Brits bloody put all the work in, and then the Americans took it over, and that was all from Bahrain. So yeah, going back, definitely very expaty. And that's actually my background. Since I was 6 weeks old, I've lived all over the world, a lot of it in various African countries, a little bit like you. And so, yeah, you could call me an expat brat, firmly in the DNA.
People say that people like you and I struggle to identify where home is.
Yeah.
And I read a book of verse when I was young about the men that don't fit in, and about the desire that people have to go and explore and experience. But people say to me, it must be tough, where is your home? Because I've lived in Dubai longer than I've lived anywhere.
Yeah, that's a really good point. So we're speaking on the Palm today, and I moved in when the Palm first opened. Very blessed to have that opportunity. But I never really regarded it as my home, so I never did the work on upgrading it and so on and so on. And here I am, 33 years into Dubai, and I'm dreaming about having a home where I travel the world and buy artifacts and put them in. But I think what it does teach you, I'm also, if I can just appoint you as my psychiatrist now, I'm an only child and an expat. So I kind of had to learn how to get on with people at an early age. And, you can choose to take the best of it, which is absolutely what I have always done. And one part of that is that you can learn from anybody. In the UAE, you just have to travel on Emirates. And when they say, and the crew speak 22 languages and have 17 different nationalities, that's a little bit like what Virtuzone, my company, is like. And it's, the UAE and you and I, a couple of Brits, we've probably learned to be entrepreneurial, perhaps from the Sindhis. We've learned how to look after our family from the Emiratis. We learn a lot, and goodness me, wouldn't it be nice if Britain could learn a few of the things about how to run a country right now?
Wow, such an important timing to consider that question. Tell me about what you wanted to be when you were young. What was your kind of ambition? Did you have one, or did you kind of stumble into it?
Probably I wanted to be sexy and successful and have a free golf club membership. No,
Are you any of those things?
Absolutely. In my own lunchtime, without doubt. But no, I You know what? I came out here because I launched a company called ITP. It existed in the UK, but we came out here. We opened an office in Karama, which used to be famous for, let's call it homage to all the brands around the world, but somewhat cheaper version. And ITP had an office there. There were two of us, and I was mentioning luck earlier. I was the sales director of the company, and most of the decision making came from London, from Munich, tiny bit of it from Cyprus, none of it from Dubai. I moved out, started blasting all my targets. Why? Because all the decision making moved to Dubai around about the same time. So I looked like an absolute hardworking genius. So, you know, it was just an absolutely fantastic time to be here, where you could really stand out. I suppose the temptation was to surf that wave and not to try and excel a little bit more yourself, because it was easier to stand out. But those people that really, really had ambition, you know, it was a time of massive opportunity. But I was talking to people recently, and do you know what? There's perhaps never been more opportunity than there is today. Large parts of the world seem to be busy trying to implode at the moment. And, you know, you can come out here, you can wear the watch that you want, your wife can carry the handbag that she wants, you don't lock your car door, your house door. That safety and security, it's, you know, it is priceless. Thank you, MasterCard.
I thought you're absolutely right about that. And when we all when we live here, are very grateful for being here. And although there's one or two things that maybe we miss and we don't enjoy so much, and maybe August weather, it might be one of those things. The fact is, this is hands down a much better place to be than many places around the world, and whether that's even places like California, which seem to be falling apart as well at the moment.
Crazy.
I wonder why more people aren't coming here, if I'm honest with you.
What's the sign outside the door? You will be prosecuted if you steal more than $1,500 worth of goods.
Crazy, isn't it?
WTF.
And I mean, I was in San Francisco, department stores are empty, downtown's empty. We even picked up a rental car in San Francisco, and the lady said, please leave it unlocked. I was like, why? Because they'll break the windows to break into it. She goes, just leave it unlocked. It's easier that way. We don't have so many winds for us to buy.
Oh, my goodness.
And that's California.
Yeah.
And San Francisco arguably is the most expensive place to buy real estate in America. Go figure. So you come here. Everyone needs to know what ITP is. You and I do. But what was ITP, and what did it become, and what was your journey there?
So I went to university. I had an amazing time. I played a lot of hockey. I learned how to sing rugby songs and play imbibing games, I think I should call them. And I didn't get a very good degree. And I had this, you know, oh my goodness, I need to go and speak to my father about this. So I thought I better get a job. And I went to a careers fair, and the Procter & Gamble's of this world didn't look at people that had the sort of degree that I did. I found a company that was in advertising, and that sounded really cool. So I thought, don't know what it is, but let me go for it. And I was chatting to an extremely attractive lady, and I didn't realize she was actually interviewing me. She told me to sell a file of fax. Your listeners probably don't know what a file of fax is.
No, they do. They're our age. They'll know. They'll remember having one.
They'll have to Google it. I'm like, I don't know why she's told me to sell a file of fax, but here's what I do. And so I came into advertising sales. And yeah, so you know, that's how I came to be here. ITP, Information Technology Publishing. Probably most of the people that work in ITP don't know what it stands for. It's a huge, great building in Dubai Media City. Probably one of the biggest publishers in the whole of the Middle East. I'm very good friends with Ian Fairservice, so I should have to doff my cap to everything that they've done at Motivate. But yeah, we were publishing computer publications back when people read magazines, and we were selling the advertising in them. And our biggest market actually was Saudi Arabia, where you used to live.
Wow.
Yeah, so I used to be in Saudi for a week, a month. And you name an area of computing. We had a publication for it, and then this coincided with the hockey stick curve growth of Dubai. So we started launching all construction type and any industry. There was a magazine for it, and then we thought, let's dip into consumer. So we launched Time Out, and we decided, how can we launch against this megathon? What's on? Well, let's go weekly. Let's be more, come out more frequently. And that was a huge step for us. And, step forward to 2007, we'd grown it from 2 of us to 600 people, 70 magazines. And that was just when the web side of things started exploding as well. So great times. And, one of the things it taught me is the power of media. That's why thank you for having me on this, because, content is now so incredibly important, and you're wanting to get this message for your company, or you're wanting to be authentic. Now, how did you do that 20 years ago? How did you come across as that? With great difficulty. But media, we launched Arabian Business. Used to be arabianbusiness.com because it was during the .com boom. But, that was a great opportunity to be liaising with the people that were running the country, not just the UAE, but across the whole of the Middle East. So that power that it gives you, an ability to influence, has always resonated with me since those days.
Wow. So that must have been a really exciting journey for you.
Yeah, it was. For heaven's sake, I came out and opened the office. It was just after the Gulf War. So we nearly were going bust. We hadn't paid the print bills for our magazines. We were the official catalogue publishers for Jitex, which I still come out in a cold sweat when someone says Jitex, because it reminds me of trekking around halls selling advertisements to people. But it saved us. The printers let us have 30 days credit. Microsoft paid a bunch of money and booked outside back covers for a year, and insisted that we kicked off their competitor from the back cover. So Microsoft were still at it in those days, and we just about survived. So I think that hardship. By the way, there's different ways of experiencing hardship, but certainly that taught me something as well.
Tell me about that. You obviously had the different publications that came out. Tell me about the one that was the most successful and the one that flopped the most, and what you learned from each one.
How about this? I'll tell you perhaps my two of my biggest losses that nearly could have been. The first is that so we launched Ahlan. Ahlan means hello or welcome in Arabic, and it was a kind of hello or okay magazine with celebrity stuff in. But what we did is we kept in the A-list celebrities, ripped out the sort of Love Island, EastEnders type stuff, and put in celebrities from Dubai, so that the marketing director of Jaguar would see himself in the magazine and think, wow, what a great magazine, let me advertise in it. So we had Ahlan, and you would be at an event, we'd take a picture of you and we'd say, excuse me, can tell us your name, and we'd write it down. And then we were also in the nightlife scene. We were in the F&B scene with Time Out. And so we launched something called Mumtaz. Mumtaz means magnificent, perfect, the various colloquialisms to that, which I won't say on air. And what that was, the business model of that was that we would go to restaurants and nightclubs, take pictures, the more glamorous, the better. And you, as the restaurant or nightclub, would pay us to give you that content. Now, what we wanted to do, of course, is to have everyone's names so that they'd read about themselves and go to it. But you try asking someone their name in the middle of a nightclub at 2 a.m. So I had a development team in India, and we were trying to crack, how can I get you to write your own name on this new thing, which was called a website? So what we were trying to do several years before Facebook was to get you to tag yourself before tagging existed. And we nearly got there. And I spent a couple of million trying to get there and failed. So that's a big failure. Otherwise, before you would see Neil Zuckerberg.
Wow.
So that's a nearly. Yeah. There's a few more of those. You know, in terms of the ones that I have really, really enjoyed, definitely Time Out, you know, is something. My offices now are right next to the Time Out food court, which is amazing. And I get to remember meeting Tony Elliott, the founder of Time Out, and legends like that. And, you know, you think about, that's the thing about Dubai, actually, when celebrities pass through Dubai, it is still something of a village, isn't it? Where, you know, if you were in a certain group and someone comes in, you're more likely to see them. Your company might be asked to help them set up a company, structure something for them. And so we've been really lucky to you know, meet some fascinating people who perhaps their guard is a bit more down than when they're in their home country. They're a little bit more relaxed. They're on holiday. We here tend not to invade people's private territory. So I suppose that's been really lucky. And so Time Out and Arabian Business have given me that.
When you look at that part of your career and the fun that you had along the way, any outsider would say, hey, why didn't you just progress down that path? You know, you built a company, it became successful, and, you know, you were having lots of fun. You haven't told me about the catastrophic failures, but you've told me about the opportunities that got away. What happened?
I got an offer that was too good to refuse, as they say in The Godfather. Actually, we had an amazing founder at ITP, Scottish guy, and you know, he was very, very single-minded in where he wanted to drive the company. I am going to position myself as the youthful disruptor here. Of course, this is my story today, so it's my truths, ladies and gentlemen. So, you know, I wanted to disrupt. I wanted to move into the web, and this was not at that stage for him. So you have a difference of opinions, and I was probably something of a prodigal son for him. Love strongly, hate equally strongly. So it was, you know what, it was the time to move on.
How many years had it been?
So I started things in 93, and I sold in 2007, 2008. And
part of your life then?
A huge part, yeah. And just to prove that I'm not a genius, I did very well from the transaction, and then promptly invested the majority of it in the property market just before we had our first crash. So another mistake for you. I was buying a property from in Souk El Baha, where I knew, because I had inside knowledge, that they were just about to build the equivalent of the Bellagio fountains. And I'm buying from a local lady. We became friends during the transaction. We were sitting in Starbucks. I signed the deal. This was now 2009, August 2009. And she said, Neil, congrats on your apartment. It's absolutely lovely. It was in Souk El Baha. She said, you know, I really didn't want to sell, but my husband told me that I had to. And in my head, I knew it was going to double in price in the next 6 months. And I thought to myself, you're very lovely, but a little bit misinformed. But I humored her. I said, oh, really, you know, why does he say that? And she said, well, he thinks the market's going to crash. And I said, well, Najiba, what does your husband do? And she said, oh, he's the governor of the central bank. My jaw hit the Starbucks desk. And approximately 4 weeks later, the market crashed, and I have lived and survived, and as Nietzsche says, grown stronger, and I can laugh at myself. Only just.
Wow. How long were you suffering?
I'm still suffering, as you can tell. I have a nervous tick. No, but you know what? It's... I was really, I mean, there were a lot of people who were leaving their cars at the airport, right? And When I sold ITP, I launched another similar business, and I was working for the ruler of Fajira, essentially, who had gifted a radio station to Sheikh Zayed, and he had been in return given the rights to run a free zone. And so the free zone legally existed, but in 2.5 years had set up 25 companies. And so my partner and I, he had worked at setting up DIFC. He worked for Sheikh Mohammed at the executive office. And it's like, why don't we launch a free zone specifically targeting startups? And so I took this idea to them and said, we'll do it with, on us. The risk will be on us. We'll set up a brand that is easy for us English people to see because, as you know, there's a lot of Umochwein and Rasokwein there. And so we set up Virtuzone, and we got really, really, really lucky. Again, there's a little bit of a theme to this podcast, isn't there? It's called luck. And that's how Virtuzone came out of the embers of being in publishing. And when people now say, can you give me your advice on publishing, Neil? I'm like, yeah, it's probably a good time not to be in that because the Googles of this world are hoovering everything up.
When you look at that first of all, where was that zone?
So it was in Fajira.
So it was in Fajira. So the zone was in Fajira. That's where it's set up, and it was called Virtuzone.
And we so the free zone itself was called and is called Creative City, and it was a media free zone, and it existed in Emiri decree, but not much else at that stage.
But that wasn't your background though. That you it's a completely different industry. So how did you get excited by it? And it wasn't what you knew. There's obviously going to be inherent risk in doing something completely different. So where did this tolerance for risk come? Was it naivety, or was it ignorance, or was it calculated?
You're so right. I've never considered myself until recently to be a risk taker, but if my friends and business associates were here, they would now be laughing because they think that I have huge cojones. How do I, if I do have that, how? I'd say it's stupidity. It is blanking off from a situation. Again, people say, how do you handle the stress? I just kind of compartmentalize it, don't think about it, and that enables me to make decisions that a lot of people would not take the risk to do. But what it also means is I need people with me because I'm the sort of guy who see a river, if this is an old army analogy, we've got to get to the other side, we've got to get there quickly, we can do it, let's do it. And I can infuse in you the belief that you can, and we'll make it. Of course, once we're over, we haven't thought about the logistics behind, and you need someone to do that as well. But so in a company, you need people with differing strengths, differing but complementary. So another boring lesson I give people is when you're expanding, when you're recruiting, don't look for someone that you would like, because you probably, it says the Gemini here, going to look for someone like yourself. No, in my case, someone that's organized, someone that can look after processes and but that type of person as well is the person that would look at the chaos that you were creating and be terrified by it, petrified by it. Completely and utterly petrified. So, trust. And again, that's, to go on a journey, I'd say trust is perhaps the most important thing that you need to get throughout the whole company. And trust comes from communication. Always, how many companies can say that everyone in the company knows exactly where you're driving to?
Okay, let's take this for a minute here. So this business is then set up. It's not what you know. It's not the world that you're from. And hey, diddly dee, you've fallen into this because of the character that you are. Let's just say that. Now, if we compare that business then to where it is now, okay, how many So let's explain what Virtuzone is for everybody's benefit, okay, to make sure everyone understands what it is. Anyone that hasn't heard of you, I don't know where you're staying. You must be under a rock somewhere. But you are company formation specialist.
Yeah, so if you want to live and work in the UAE, then you need a trade license. The trade license is a piece of paper that says you have a company and that company can then sponsor people and allow them to work, enable you to open bank accounts and so on. And the free zones, of which there are about 55 now, they traditionally have been allowed you to have 100% foreign ownership. And this was back in the day when one used to have a 51% local partner. So there were very efficient, quick ways to set up a company and to enable you to do business here. And we set up at a time when traditionally, if you wanted a company, you had to have an office, you had to have a local partner. And so we set something up that was infinitely cheaper, faster to do, and enabled you as an entrepreneur to prioritize spending your money on perhaps, recruiting the right staff, getting leads and selling to the leads rather than loading yourself up with cost. And that's why in the early days, only big companies would survive here. And it was our mission to persuade the leadership of the country that what is now called the SME space, but I'd call it the micro business space, needs to be, really incubated, because that's where the growth can come from. And fast forward to right here and now, we've just introduced corporate tax, and everyone hears tax, and all the international listeners are going to be going, oh my God, tax. We've got 9% corporate tax, right, which is one of the lowest in the world. But the amazing thing is that the government have recognized that they need to support startups. So there's a threshold. What most people, until recently, most people thought that if they're in a free zone, they didn't have to pay tax for 50 years. That's not true. You need to demonstrate that you are tax ready, that you've been audited. But if you're making less than $100,000 profit or less than $1 million in revenue, you don't have to pay any tax. And if you have certain activities, or if you're operating your company from here, but you're operating it internationally, you don't have to pay tax. So the country has really got behind the startups to make it easier for them for the first 3 years. And there's so few places actually doing that. So, we set up about 500 companies a month now, and that's not due to our brilliance. It's because the UAE is the best place in the world to structure your company. Along came COVID, right? Remember in the UK, you couldn't see your parents if they were 1.5 miles away. So people were coming out here thinking, do you know what, why don't I stay here for 3 months? I've been here on holiday before, but now I'm going to actually check in. I'm going to take, a nice discounted rate. And I remember I was on stage with the Minister of Economy, and he was challenging. It was the first live audience after COVID had started. And he said, we need to triple the revenue that we bring in. And I said, well, Your Excellency, let me tell you a story. I have a Scottish friend. He has a property business. He moved out of London to Portugal because he's tight, not generalizing anything about Scotsmen at all. He was running a fund based in the Cayman Island. If he repatriated the funds to Portugal, there was a big tax on it. If he set up a company in the UAE, put the profits here, 0% tax, issue a dividend to himself in the UK or Europe, 0%, perfectly legal. So he did that. Whilst he was here, we got him inoculated for COVID. Do you remember when in England you couldn't do that unless you were 70?
Yeah.
So we got him inoculated against COVID in a partnership we had with a hospital. He was more tax efficient than he'd ever been. And do you know what else he did? His name's Scott Drummond, by the way. Let's embarrass him. He had a hair transplant because his friends were in London and they couldn't see him and tease him. So I said, Your Excellency, to the Minister of Economy, that's how we bring money into the country. Look, there's a guy, he set up a company, he stayed in a hotel for 3 months, and he's used some of our services. And look at what's happening now. What's happening, when we set up Virtuzone, it was just people who were genuinely moving from Moscow, from London, from Sydney to the UAE to start their business. Now it's very different. You've got people that are running their global businesses who are thinking, do you know what? Technology allows me to run it from anywhere in the world now. Why don't, goodness me, why don't I run it from a place that isn't raining the whole time, that is safe? Let me structure it from here. And then they come out here, they get a house, where else can you be? Right next to 2 international finance centers, the only place in the world that has that, and live on the beach. There's very, very few. So, that they're doing these things. And the thing that I've noticed in 33 years is planning. I tease myself, or I talk about myself as being lucky, but of course the people who are most lucky are actually good, and they've planned it. You don't realize they've planned it. So you just need to see the road system here, and you go away for the weekend and there's another flyover. It's incredibly well planned.
Agreed. Everything you said makes complete sense. But just take me on this journey from Virtuzone beginning to how old is the company?
So the company is 15 years old.
15 years old.
Yeah.
And in 15 years, how many companies have you established?
Over 70,000 companies.
Over 70,000.
And Spencer, you're so right. I didn't know anything about the industry at all. We launched this product right at the time of the global financial crisis. So people were losing their jobs in corporate companies and going, what do I do? If they went home, it was even worse. So they'd had an idea, their kids were at school here, their network was here. What can I do? Let me stay here. So again, we got lucky, right place, right time, because they were able to set up with a very, very small initial investment, and we financed it over the whole year. So their license, they could pay
possible to do
over the whole year. But I was a sales guy. My partner is a brilliant marketeer. That's what we were good at. You were coming in, filling out your form to set up your company. We were writing it in a computer, emailing it to Fujira. The guy was printing it there, walking 10 meters to the government office where he would type it in his computer. You can imagine that Muhammad can be spelt in 4 different ways. And by the time it got to the end, it probably spelt differently from what it was in the passport, right? And then when the visa's rejected because it doesn't match the passport, whose fault was that? Well, it was our fault, of course. And we were selling something that cost us, we were buying it for a couple of £1,000 from the government and selling it for a little margin. Government, of course, it was costing them the price of a piece of paper. So my competitors were issuing the same raw material that I was using for dramatically less money. So that taught me I had to get by on service, on customer experience. And so adversity taught us to be better.
So tell me about that, because there's lots of companies that do what you do. There's lots of companies that, and they crop up everywhere. Every corner of this part of this city, there's someone offering to do something around that. I would say second to real estate brokers, it feels like that there's company formation businesses in various forms.
There's 3,200 in the UAE doing.
There's 3,200 companies doing what you do.
And the vast majority of them seem to have zone in their name. So I thank them all for plagiarism as the sincerest form of flattery.
So how did you get to be number one? Where did you go wrong? What are you exceptionally good at as a business that has enabled you to be the number one?
So, we were the first independent company formation specialists. In the olden days, you'd have used a law firm or an accounting firm to set up. So,
were you before Links?
Yes, we were actually. So I do know him. I doff my cap to him, and what he did absolutely brilliantly was provide a solution that enabled you to have a 51% local partner through corporate sponsorship. We do the same, and I'd like to thank John for inspiring me to do that. And that's still a product which is very, for example, if you're in real estate, you have to have a local partner, and they have to have real estate qualifications. So that product's really, really good for them. Our speciality was free zones. We now do the whole gamut, but we started in free zones. So it was a much cheaper way to do things, which
So you were offering an advantage from a cost perspective, but then being the first doesn't always guarantee you'll be the best or the most successful. So what's the secret in the business? What is it that's made you guys number one? What's special about you?
So it's easy to say first mover advantage, but you're right. So many people that thought they had first mover advantage ran out of cash. So what you've got to do, in my opinion, is firstly, don't try and do 100 things. You've got to identify what are the things you're really good at, and you've got to go for them and focus at them. Now, was that deliberately my strategy, or did it just happen to be what I bumped into because I was a little bit of a risk taker? I'd probably say it was the latter. When I write a book, I would deny that, and it was all part of the master vision. But so there was a massive belief. There was a decision to basically to put absolutely everything into it. If it had failed, and for the first 3 months, we had no idea whether we were going to be allowed to do this. We were in those days selling Northern Emirates free zone licenses from JBR The Walk, right next to Beach A Restaurant. When we signed a partnership a few years later with Ras Al Khaimah and His Highness came to our offices, his sales director was like, I remember you guys, we tried to shut you down. And we knew we'd succeeded when the lampposts around our office were wrapped with RAG, which is a competitive free zone, wrapped with their ads. And I'm like, we've succeeded.
How many people does the company employ?
234 currently, and which is quite a lot when you consider, that we're just a company formation company that now provides corporate services. And the reason it's more than almost all of the other ones is what we try to do is take control over the processes. So we provide a quasi-government service. So the issuance of trade license, the issuance of visas, and then providing the banking and the telecom behind it and supporting and incubating those companies. A lot of that traditionally would be handled by the government. And we wanted to get control over that process because we wanted to automate it. We wanted to remove human error. We wanted to give great customer experience. And so, I remember, so for example, the immigration is a federal, not a country thing. So ultimate approval of issuing visas rests with Abu Dhabi. And we were, many times having challenges with some of the people that were setting up, perhaps from what is considered to be high-risk countries. And we initially came in as well, we're the clever Englishman and Australian, and that was a terrible mistake. When we thought about it and realized that the department we were dealing with didn't even have a working printer, because what government funding is sometimes like. So we invested in a couple of printers for them. We invested in some Emirati staff way before Emiratization was a thing, working for them but employed by us, and suddenly things started happening a lot faster. And I think that, Spencer, you can empathize with that. That is trying to have international standards but with local sensibility. And it's easy not to have that. So you need to be listening.
When you look at the business as it stands and you consider the wins you had along the way where you got lucky, were there times over the last 15 years where you've sat down, and how many of you run the business together? There's 3 of you or 4?
So there are 3 shareholders, two founders, but I'd like to think 234 stakeholders. I had to say that, but it's true.
So, because sometimes you have those moments, don't you? And you have those wins that come in, and you're like, "Holy macaroni! How did that happen?"
Yeah.
Tell me, because I think entrepreneurs don't want to know that it was easy. I think entrepreneurs that hear what you're telling us is that, oh wow, so I can't replicate Jeff because I can't replicate Neil because I'm not like him. I'm not a risk taker. I'm not this guy that can wing this type of stuff and just go with my gut, which instinctively appears to be one of your great attributes. I want people to know where you got it wrong, so that they can identify where you've got it wrong along the way. You 500 companies a month, did you say you're setting up? You set up over 70,000.
Yeah.
And the number one business here doing this, it's like you're a huge success. And you say 3,200, did you say? Companies doing the same thing?
Yeah.
Which is a monster amount of competition.
Yeah.
That some of them must hate your guts with a passion, and some of them must doff their cap to you and admire you for the success you've had. But for entrepreneurs that understand that story, can anyone do this? Is it easy?
Well, you know what? It is one of the models for quick success is look for something that is working. Perhaps look for it, typically go and look at what's happening in Silicon Valley and replicate it here. Many people have done that. Kareem being, an absolutely brilliant example. That's a great business model. Yeah, you could call it copying. Well, what's wrong with copying if it's a legal thing and you do it really well? So a lot of the companies that have replicated what we do, they don't need to spend money on innovation. They don't need to perhaps spend the same amount of money on staff salaries and the same amount of money on training as we do, because we're trying to push at the frontier. So their business model is a different one, but it doesn't mean it's a bad one. Where perhaps that argument falls down is when you do need to do something differently. And I think that in the world at the moment, things are changing. And you hear on podcasts about AI and automation. I had a team training session recently, and I said, hands up, who feels threatened by AI? And actually only 2 people put their hands up. But I said, well, you know what? At the moment, you're right. Like our market share, like we're doing 500 companies a month, but our market share is actually only about 4%. So to grow, if we were 70%, it would be incredibly hard to get to 75, but 4, get to 8 quite easily. And the way we'll get to 8 is by, one of the biggest and the things to be able to do is put the customer in charge of the journey. Let them choose what they want rather than think that they're being sold to. So they've got exactly what they want that suits exactly their journey rather than something that I want to sell them. If I can do that for them, if I can eliminate human error, and if I can speed up processes, then that achieves so much. And so automation and allowing people to start paying on a monthly basis rather than have to front load all of their costs, that's going to disrupt massively. And that's happening right at the moment. So innovation, embracing that, not going, do you know what, we're the number one and that's fantastic, because very, very rapidly as empires fall, so can very large companies. You don't think it's going to happen, and then it does again. And history teaches us that. So, actually, I think that we have survived a few crises. I remember, the very early days of COVID, sitting with my 2 fellow stakeholders, going at the kitchen table, going, because people need to get an entry visa to be able to set up a company, and no one could travel here, right? And then if Brits, which was our largest particular nationality, when they were allowed to come here, then if they came back, they had to quarantine for, I can't remember how many weeks it was. So no one was traveling, and that our business depended on it. And literally in 3 months, that changed and things started booming. But, you have these moments where your heart is literally in your mouth. And so to answer your question, people listening, you might not be the same as me, but take a few things that you think, do you know what? I can mold that to me. but there's something else that you're really, really good at. And I'm going to be really, really boring here and say there's no better place in the world to come and do it. This place is growing. We know that they have plans and for it to work. And when has it not worked? You know, they need to have double the number of hotel rooms. They need to have A, B, and C. And meanwhile, people are more and more scared to be a success. You know, like, yes, shoot me for being Mr. I'm not very woke, but, you know, it's frowned on. It's, what is it, poppy syndrome, tall poppy syndrome? You know, that's existing all over the place at the moment. To be able to have your kids educated in the way that you would like them to be, not have something foisted on you, that exists here as well.
Tell me how you get your clients. What's your strategy? You're a sales guy. I'm a sales guy. We love. I hate people that don't like salespeople.
Okay.
When people look down the end of their nose at me, I remember when I was a youngster and I first got into sales and I met this girl in a bar in the city.
Oh, yeah.
I'll never forget it.
But will she?
Well, we were in a relationship. The funny story happened. Sarah Newton is her name. I met her in this bar. I looked at her for 3 hours. I was with someone just like you. We were having a couple of beers and you were the buddy going, just go and talk to her. And I was like, no, she'll say no. And 3 hours later, I had the courage. I went and spoke to her. We had a chat. She told me what she did for a living, blah, blah, blah. She asked me what I did for a living. I said, I'm a salesman. And she said, oh, great. And I'm like, well, what do you mean? She goes, well, I was hoping for someone better. And I went, what's better? She said, I don't know, a stockbroker, an investment banker, a doctor, an engineer, somebody. And so I went on to explain to her, I said, you work for an architectural firm. Does your company have clients? She's like, well, of course we do. I said, well, who gets them?
Yeah.
She goes, well, our executive business development management team. I'm like, oh, the salespeople.
Yeah.
I said, remember something, if they don't get any clients, you don't have any salary. So have a bit more respect for these guys.
Absolutely.
And so I believe the salespeople are the backbone of every business. So I get excited when I talk to salespeople because we naturally enthusiastic about.
You know, the thing is about us, because you and I are as one on this, we're also very easy to sell to.
Shh, don't say that. Don't let the cat out of the bag.
Sarah says hi, by the way. Listen, the fear of rejection, right? As humans, we hate being rejected. And so that's, you know, actually something that I would say I would like to try and share, because I believe in total football. So anyone in our company, I'm like, don't worry about making a mistake and don't worry about being rejected, because if we're not trying, then you won't be rejected. That's why people prefer to send an email than actually sit face to face or call someone up. So it's just overcoming that barrier. It's really simple.
But if I was selling company formation, you said to me, right, Spence, come and work for us. You're in sales. Go find some.
I couldn't
clients.
afford you, Spence.
But let's say you could. 70,000 companies you get in it. How do you find people that are looking? Is most of it people coming to you asking questions that turn into leads, or is it done through advertising? Is it done through branding? What is your go-to?
I suppose there's a couple of things. So there's the first, which is established thought leadership. I'm stealing this from Warren Buffett, but he liked to invest in businesses that had a moat around them, which made it difficult for people to attack them. So there are 3,200 companies out there that, in theory, do what we do. But how many of them speak with authority and that you can trust that they'll take you on that journey, they'll give you the right advice? So, for example, we're one of, if not the only, one of the very, very few of those 3,200 where we renew the customer in year 2, year 3, year 4. We legally, in our partnerships with the jurisdictions, have that. And so what that means is I'm investing in customer experience because I can afford to perhaps not even make any money in year 1, but provide you additional services that make you more likely to succeed. If I'm giving you, for example, if I'm giving you leads, or if I'm helping you with your banking so that you're more able to send out invoices. You know, we recently built an accounts receivable system. It used to take us 5 days from speaking to you and sending you a quote and then getting my accounts team to match the invoice with that and so on. 5 days. We now do it in 5 minutes. Okay. And what that means is no mistakes. The salespeople can spend more time selling, and we're not constantly matching everything and occasionally making mistakes. And then we realize we've spent loads of time and money building it. Why don't we offer it to our customers? We've already built it, so we can actually offer it to them incredibly inexpensively. And it's something that they need and would cost them much more otherwise. So there you're generating a completely new, you're generating customer stickiness, loyalty, appreciation. So, these are the things that can spring from what you're doing.
Makes a lot of sense. You're on the radio quite a bit. We see you there.
You have a face for radio.
And when you look at the business at 58 years old as you are right now, are you the man that's going to decide to sell at some point? Do you still love it? Do you still feel 35 years old and can't imagine not being part of it?
At 35, you insult me, sir. 31, just like my waist size. No, I mean, that's such a good point, actually. Look, I'm an empire builder. I, don't ever retire, because when you retire, your brain stops working and you age 20 years in about 3 months. When I was at ITP in the latter stages of my career there, I was the ambassador for the company. I was at events, amazing events and stuff. Yet I didn't really have, what you would now call KPIs that I could go, do you know what? I succeeded. I did that. I wasn't getting fulfillment. And what I love is making a difference. And actually, I know this is really corny, but if people that I've developed do something, and I feel that I've played a role in it, then that gives me fulfillment. And I think that there's so much more to do. Maybe the biggest mistake that I've made in the last few years is thinking that 25% growth per annum is enough. It's good, but, so much of that is because what the country, the macroeconomics, what else could we do? How could we diversify? How could we add complementary things that make it better for our customer, but by definition are better for us as well? So I would only be interested to answer your question very directly, because there's been a lot of interest. There's a lot of interest in Dubai. We were nearly bought 3 years ago. It's very funny, actually. We were nearly bought, and we went to commercial due diligence, and they commissioned a very high-powered company that I may or may not name later in the podcast. And this is 3 years ago, and they came out with a report that said Dubai is not going to grow by enough to warrant stepping into this country. As you can imagine, I've been sending them links to Arabian Business and Gulf News articles ever since, going, thanks for that prescient tip in your crystal ball. So the only way I would sell is if the investor was strategic, so that they enabled me to do more faster. I think that there is a global opportunity. So in our industry, you can go to a Sovereign, a Vistra, a Trident in 32 countries, and they're going to sell you a BVI, a Cayman Island, a Mauritius company. But all of those jurisdictions are, waning. There's, reputational risk, Panama, Malta, Cyprus nearly shutting down, Hong Kong with issues of itself. Meanwhile, the UAE, again, was it luck? No, it wasn't luck. But, so for a global company to have at its centerpiece what I think is the best product in the world to structure your company, which is a UAE company, well, there's an opportunity. There's no one doing that. And that's what I would like to do.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I love your energy. It's just a real kind of like bundle of positivity and optimism and with a great sense of humor as well. So having you here today and talking about this for me is just, I want people to take away from stuff that if we have a positive outlook and we are focused and we are committed and we're willing to take action, then we can achieve things. Let's just give some tips then from your own experience to entrepreneurs and people that are maybe considering the UAE, maybe considering the UAE, not to set up a business or to use a business setup formation, a business setup company, but to consider setting up a business. What do you think are the key attributes that people need to have to be successful in business?
So the first thing I would do is, if you don't ask, you don't get. So many of us, great entrepreneurs can be many things. You and I would hope that there's a strong salesperson in there, but very often, if you're an inventor type, you're probably not a great salesman. You might not enjoy socializing with people. So, ask, look into your network. That's the first thing, because perhaps the best bit of financial advice is don't throw a load of money away. And of every 10 ideas, 5 of them are probably going to fail. So that's the first bit, which is really seek advice from people. And then, what are the things that I would say weight things in your favor? So go to somewhere where growth is going to happen. And, where you've got to say that Africa, speaking as two old Africa hands, Africa is going to grow. Personally, I believe that where China decides to turn its hand, just the simple numbers there, and we haven't yet, we've had the Russian-speaking brain gain. And by the way, it's not just financial gain. It's not just oligarchs moving out here. It's really, really bright young people who are brilliant at, for example, programming, developing, and so on. So the workforce here is far, far advanced to when I was able to get a job 30 odd years ago. So, there's that side to it. So look for growth. And then, yes, you want a workforce who are enjoying what they're doing. So how can you achieve that? And I'd be looking for somewhere that encourages people to be ambitious, rewards them, and doesn't penalize them. If you're in France, if you're an eye surgeon, you probably deliberately only work for 2 days a week, because once you go over a certain amount, you get taxed at like 75%. What kind of government is that? Encourage brilliant people to work harder and want to create things. It's not rocket science. And that's what they're doing in the UAE. And you know what? I was lucky enough. I first met Sheikh Mohammed 32 years ago, and I met him again last week. And why did I meet him? Because he flew into the country and he said to one of his incredible advisors, I want to meet some people in the industry. I want to know what they're thinking, what they're talking about. It was just such a privilege. That guy's got energy, and that's the guy who, if he believes that a 16 lane highway is the right way to go, he'll make it happen, rather than thinking, oh, is that going to, cost me the popular vote? No.
Fair point.
Yeah.
Fair point.
Yeah.
Neil, thank you so much for coming to join us on the show today. It's been great chatting.
I've loved it. Thank you very much indeed. And when I am a gazillionaire and can afford you, you know who I'm calling.
Thanks a million.
Cheers, buddy.